Professor and a Fox News contributor. So here's the cover of the New York Post. Which always is an interesting way of putting things, saying it had to be Wu. And then the Wall Street Journal's take on the declaration from the Energy Department saying, quote, it's more evidence that the media and public health groupthink about COVID was mistaken and destructive. But this wasn't just groupthink. It was censorship. It was shaming. It was canceling people for saying it.
I think that's right, John. We have to focus as much on the censorship as the science in this story. You have a great number of experts who were shunned and silenced for even raising this theory. And this was done with an alliance of the government and the media and social media companies that really pursued anyone that put their head up and said, wait, it seems like this has to be one of those possibilities. You have a lab doing this research near this wet market in Wuhan. Why wouldn't that be plausible? But instead, the Washington Post said this was a debunked conspiracy theory. The New York Times science reporter said just about a year ago, this is just a racist theory that we shouldn't be talking about. And so a lot of academics got the message. They kept their heads down. They stopped talking about it. And that's the problem with censorship. You know, President Biden said once, not long ago, said that social media companies were, quote, killing people because they weren't censoring more on COVID disinformation. And that's obviously the problem here. Censorship doesn't save lives, but it can cost lives. You can cut off valuable public health debates, not just on the origin, but the efficacy of things like masks and vaccines. That's what we have to talk about.
So I remember the week of April the 27th, Bret Baier had been developing some sources who suggested that there was a degree of confidence, we don't know what the degree was, in U.S. government agencies that Wuhan was the source of the lab leak. So on the 30th, in the East Room of the White House, I had this exchange with then President Trump. Listen here. Have you seen anything at this point that gives you a high degree of confidence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of this virus?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
What gives you a high degree of confidence that this originated from the Wuhan Institute of Virology?
I can't tell you that. I'm not allowed to tell you that.
We don't know exactly what he was referring to. We haven't found out since. But he was right.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem, John, is that the denial of the lab theory became part of the narrative against Trump. And we've seen how that plays out, that the minute this was pegged as showing that Trump is a racist, the media piled on and said that all of this was racism, and Trump and anyone who utters this theory is just outing themselves as sort of the COVID Bull Connors of our time. Well, that has a public health impact. What should be a moment of shame for many in the media is that they actively prevented a public health debate from occurring. They attacked legitimate and good faith experts who were trying to say, look, I have concerns here. I've looked at how this virus is constructed. I've looked at missing things here in this chain. And it does not seem to me like this was a natural source. Now, we may, we're going to continue to debate that, but we're now having the debate. It's just a couple of years late.
But here's the thing about science. Science has always been about a debate. Some people said the world was flat. Others came along and said, no, it's round. There was a great debate until we finally figured out that it was. Some people thought that the Earth was the center of the solar system. Somebody else came along and said, no, it's the sun, actually, that's the center of the solar system. And there was a debate about that until finally we figured out, yes, that Galileo was right. But here we have the shutdown of alternate theories about what's going on, and then the same thing applied to natural immunity from previous COVID infection. Oh, that's no good. You can't take that. You've got to have the vaccine because that was politically driven. And now we find out from this big study in Oxford that, oh, by the way, those masks that our children were wearing for so long, which hindered their development in school, they didn't really do anything either.
Right, these people have been largely vindicated. We also know from a lawsuit against social media that the CDC did participate in these back-channel discussions on who to censor, who to target. We just had a hearing I testified in that showed that as many as 80 FBI agents were actively involved in a censorship program. We need to know about that too. The Democrats have opposed really any effort to investigate the role of the U.S. government in censoring citizens. But the polls indicate that the public wants to know. They want transparency here. And I hope that this lab theory development just shows the danger of censorship and the reason we need to know more.
So, I mean, it is comforting to know, though, that all of the people who disagreed with what was being said at the time.
Les nouvelles du Facteur.
Pour ceux qui veulent soutenir notre travail, les liens sont en description.